All right, so this is the last video in the part for the magazine covers. If you haven't gone back and watched the first one, make sure you do. There's some really important stuff in there that you will need to review that I'm not going to go into detail here. So I think this picture is really great. Just double check the print quality, which is referenced in video 1 and the announcement I just posted. This typeface here looks like it appears on our do not use list. I could be wrong about that, but make sure that it's not Apple Chancery or Monotype Cursive or one of the ones that looks like those. When you put things in all text, they are harder to read. So all caps, they're harder to read, and everything you have on here is all caps. So I'm going to suggest that you find a typeface that has a little bit more variety, so you can use maybe some all caps and some that you can use some in mixed case. Your E is super far away from your F, which is probably just how the typeface was designed, but you do have an issue of like all this space that comes here and here because of the size difference. So I would make this smaller. You can also make it its own text box and move it a little bit closer to your F so that you have a little bit better legibility. That'll also allow you to kind of let this P, I would make this all smaller and move it up and let this P show a little bit more because we don't see enough of it to know what it is, so that would help that there. And then red is kind of a cliche color, and because nothing in here is red, I would suggest maybe looking at something. This is all about working out, but red's not a very active color. It's not a color that's as bright as some other colors. Last comment here is to watch that internal margin that InDesign gives you. All of your text needs to stay inside that. Also make sure you have 8.5 by 11. I'm not sure if that's what size this is. So a few things there that will help continue to strengthen your work. Make sure also visual hierarchy wise you have one that's the main cover line. Okay, so same comments as I did in the last one about the color, because there's nothing red in here that you have to use. To pull off of, I would just pick a different color and I would just use it for a pop, kind of like the last example did. When everything is red, it loses some of that contrast. So I would do that. I can't tell right now, is this your main cover line? I would guess it's this one, but we have a lot of text on here. I'm not sure that you need all of it. It looks like maybe you could instead of find out the 12 must-have items for every dancer, you could just put 12 must-have items for our dancers. So see how you can maybe make it smaller, and then you might be able to use it a little bit more dynamically inside the shape that you have. That's not the shape I'm suggesting that you do, but you could make it a little bit bigger. And then I would also see about maybe moving your stuff up. Goodness, I can't draw a straight line today. Moving your stuff up a bit so that it kind of touches that internal margin that InDesign uses. So if it were stacked on a rack, you don't want to lose any opportunity to show some of that. Oh, cat. There are a few cover lines missing here. That's a cute picture of a cat. It's risky to do a design like this with a picture that's not, you have a super high-end artistic feel, but the picture is a little bit expected as far as like it's a nice picture of a cat, but it doesn't have that same kind of high-end fashion feel that you're designing within. So I'm going to suggest finding another picture if you want to keep this feeling going on, something that's a little bit more artistic instead of a depiction or just a nice picture. You do have 3 cover lines. There aren't daily cat magazines, or magazines that just aren't daily in general. I think the most frequent is weekly. And this is competing with this up here as far as what's most important for me to look at. So just take a look at that visual hierarchy and review the requirements for the project so that you have all the pieces that you need to have. Okay. Really like this picture. It's making me hungry at lunchtime, but because it has kind of a busy background, we're having some issues with legibility of your cover lines. It also looks distorted. So generally bowls, when they're photographed, are perfect circles, and this doesn't look quite like it is. So double check that that's not distorted. If you aren't sure how to do that, just review that image handling presentation. It does talk about that in there. So with these, you're going to need to try to either edit the background so that it's a little bit more simple, maybe darken this area and work on some of the cover lines there, or look for a different picture that has more space for you. This typeface here is a really nice typeface, and it kind of gives you that nice feeling that high-end food magazines have, but when you make it smaller, it doesn't fit as well. And then this typeface that you've selected here looks a little clunky next to this one because it's got so much finesse. So maybe look for a sans serif that's a little bit thinner, or one that that you look at different ways to format the text so that it isn't quite as stacked. Like this is a little bit closer than this is to that idea. So keep working on that there. And then the last thing is that internal margin. You do want to make sure that in InDesign your internal margin is all your text stays inside there.